Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly, as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello. Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. I am John Pollock, joined by Wai Ting, and tonight we are going to be talking about AEW Dynamite, Legacy of Blood.
Pretty much, wasn't it?
That was quite the match. We now have a debate on what was the superior 50-minute match from AEW over the last couple of nights. I think many people will have their thoughts, and let's all have our thoughts for whoever is coming out for Rampage as we speak to follow that Blood and Guts match.
Or how about the ring crew, okay? Whoever has to clean that up.
Yeah, you're right. It'll probably be a bit of a gap before. I mean, if ever there was a night to tape Rampage first instead of last, tonight would have been it.
Well, it's a royal Rampage, John. You know, big battle royal.
Does it have to be done late at night?
It's always going to be a challenge, but maybe especially tonight.
Well, we are going to be getting on lots to come tonight. This is just the warm-up, folks. You're going to be hearing from me and Wai for hours tonight. Hours. We're going to be chatting about Blood and Guts. We're going to be talking about the latest news. And for those on the Post Wrestling Cafe, as soon as we wrap up here, we're jumping over to the cafe where we're going to talk about more blood, more guts. It is our review of Abdullah the Butcher, Legacy of Blood from Dark Side of the Ring on Tuesday night. So boy, did they, maybe that's why Dark Side moved their schedule around to play off of the theme of the week, which is blood.
Really the perfect, I think, segue to talk about Dark Side of the Ring after something like this. And I have to imagine Mox might have been inspired by watching this. That's the reason for the forks, perhaps.
Could have been. Maybe last night he was just watching and he thought, you know what? We've done the screwdriver to death. It's now being used by other companies. Let's move on to forks.
Could be.
All right. We'll talk all about that. Wai, what is up on the site now? What can people check into? I know it's been a slow week here at Post Wrestling, but what could people scratch the surface and find?
A whole lot up there right now. Yesterday, I had the chance to talk to Justin Goodman, brother of Jordan, on the wellness policy, talking about fitness and nutrition. And that was a really informative and insightful chat. So that's up on the cafe feed right now for free for everybody. Also here up on YouTube. This afternoon, John, you and Brandon had a chance to talk to Chris Samsa, didn't you?
The Chris Samsa on Twitter.
Yes.
Yes. We had Chris on to talk about the G1, and Brandon and him got to bond over Python, and we got to hear about sort of how he got into New Japan and now has become really this interesting kind of addition to these New Japan broadcasts, in that he fuels all of these stats to Kevin Kelly and they incorporate these into the broadcast, I think, in a very natural way. It's not as though it's just reading off all these random stats. Like, they work themselves into the match stories, and Chris Samsa puts a ton of work into this. So it was cool to hear from his thoughts on the G1, and then Brandon and I also talking about a lot of the latest news. Tony Khan had a media call on Tuesday. We discussed the idea of a 3-hour Dynamite. Is it that preposterous, and would it make sense for AEW in the absence of a Friday night show if you were to move that hour to 10 to 11 on Wednesday nights?
I think the argument makes a lot of sense, honestly. I mean, not so much, I think, for our lives, and certainly not for our spouses' lives, but if you are signed on to provide this much content, what's the best way to, guarantee that you have a big audience for this third hour, essentially, of Rampage?
I don't think there's any argument the audience you would get from 10 to 11 on Wednesday night versus Friday night from 10 to 11. And it's no added cost. It's what is going on at this moment at the TD Garden is being broadcast live.
You can argue the cost might be an exhaustion for your audience watching at home, not just the audience that's live. You can argue maybe there might be detriments, in other ways, but I could at least see him, considering the idea.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about exhaustion, you're at that point. Like you're still consuming that amount of hours per week.
Yeah, but a lot of people aren't choosing to watch Rampage. By putting it on right after Dynamite, you're kind of telling people that this is a part of the show. And do you want to risk people only watching a portion of Dynamite at this point? Anyway, it's a bigger discussion, but that's up on the site. Really interesting conversation as always between you and Brandon and Chris Samsa. Also on the site, just released while we were actually watching Dynamite, our latest G1 coverage show, G1 Climax 33, Night 4, hosted by Karen and Bruce. So that's up on the set right now. Night 3 was covered between John and WH Park yesterday. So that's all up at postwrestlingcafe.com or video.postwrestling.com.
Wai was very happy to hear WH on the show on Tuesday.
I mean, he's kind of been missed on some of these New Japan reviews, and in a G1 context, it's always very refreshing to hear WH takes, as well as his new scale.
He has a new rating system that you have to listen to the show to get the full appreciation of. So that is up. And then there will be another G1 show on Friday with WH and Eric Marcotte, as they will be chatting about the next G1 card. There'll also be one dropping on Sunday. So tons of shows coming up. Friday night, Wai and I are going to be live with a review of the Ring of Honor pay-per-view that I would certainly assume coming out of tonight is going to be Claudio and PAC in the main event. I think that was where most people were led in the direction of, and I would think that they will make that announcement probably imminently. We should even keep an eye on that tonight.
Yeah. Chat room, keep us updated if that becomes official, but that seems very likely at this point.
So live at 11 p.m. Eastern time. And also we've got Rewind-A-Dynamite that's going to be dropping over the next 24 hours. AWA Super Clash 85, just because. So look forward to that as well coming up. Let's talk about a couple of news items before we get to Dynamite. Rick Steiner, not going to be part of WrestleCon. WrestleCon put out a new statement, and they stated that when we allowed Rick Steiner to return to our convention as a vendor guest of Tony Hunter Promotions, we did not adequately take into account the impact his past words from our last event still held in the LGBTQIA+ community. We initially allowed him to return because, one, we still feel that people deserve a second chance, and number two, Rick did make an apology to all parties that chose to be present. 3, we lacked any type of code of conduct harassment policy that clearly defined our expectations as a convenient participant. He went on to state, after a thoughtful dialogue with Brian Bell of SB Nation's Outsports and host of the LGBT in the Ring podcast on Monday, we agreed with their opinion. It was necessary to have some type of public acknowledgement and apology from Rick Steiner at an absolute minimum to allow him to attend Detroit. Because we understand this issue required great urgency, we gave Rick Steiner 24 hours to make such a statement. Unfortunately, there's not currently, and we do not expect to receive such a statement, and we have therefore made a decision to revoke our permission for him to attend. They go on to state that they have now instituted a draft of a code of conduct and anti-harassment policy that will be placed on their website, and that is the latest. So I think from all sides that this was handled, to me, pretty hastily in the sense that here was somebody that was not even willing to make a public apology, and it just seems like WrestleCon announced this and either thought that there wouldn't be any blowback or felt that it could be managed. And instead, it just became 24 hours of really, bad PR for WrestleCon. And in the end, Rick Steiner didn't even want to put out a statement or anything like that. He wanted this to be a private matter, and thus he's off. So I think this was something that just, I don't know, maybe it was just not well thought out in terms of what the expected reaction would be. And the fact that, this guy, if he's not even willing to make a public statement about it, you can draw your own conclusions to that. Whether he wants this to just go away and not be a bigger story or what. But anyway, it just seems like this was something that was avoidable, and now he won't be at WrestleCon. So that's that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the end result, I feel WrestleCon handled it well in the aftermath of some of that outrage, in speaking to people that might be a lot more aware of the harm of his words, and in taking action beyond that to try to request at least a public statement from Rick Steiner. And then subsequently,
they weren't stubborn in the sense of where we're just going to ride out the negative coverage and people will tire of it and move on to the next news cycle. They did take active measures, like speaking
Mhm.
to an individual in the community and, seeking out a public apology from Rick Steiner. Like, you can't say they just simply put this out and then they didn't care about the backlash. It seemed like they did take that aspect to heart.
Yeah, and I think they should be commended for their reaction to the public, response to the decision. In the end, I think this guy just kind of has shown his true colors that much more, towards the public, and I have even less reason to want to, support anything Rick Steiner related in the future.
It doesn't read well when he was asked to give a public statement and opted not to do so, and has not addressed it at all publicly since. And it just seems as though, whatever he did privately, it's like only those people that were involved in that can speak to what they determined was his sincerity or lack thereof from the story. Bryan Danielson gave an update today. This was just a day after I had asked about this on the media call, but he confirmed that he got surgery on his arm 2 weeks ago and had a steel rod and 9 screws inserted. He said surgery went well. I'm on the road to recovery, but no update. Obviously, that sounds very significant. And as Tony Khan mentioned on the media call, that it was worse than originally thought. And, that night, Danielson has not had it checked out by, at that point, he's talking about an hour after this injury and is thinking 6 to 8 weeks is reasonable. That does not seem likely.
He seemed to think it was simply like maybe a smaller fracture rather than a clean break. 6 to 8 weeks was probably very a very early estimate without really seeing x-rays or anything else.
And that timetable coincided with the idea in the room that, man, all in is maybe it's possible. I would say that's probably unlikely. Not to say he couldn't appear on some of these big shows in a non-wrestling capacity, but it would be pretty much shocking if he is wrestling anytime soon.
It's really unfortunate. I mean, it's AEW's biggest show. He's one of the biggest names on the entire roster, and I imagine would have been set up for a pretty big match. So you have to wonder how Tony was pivoting, who his opponent was scheduled to be. Unfortunate, but man, like these things happen in wrestling, and he's going to be coming back, I think, with quite the legendary story to tell coming out of that match where he wrestled it with a broken arm, won it with a broken arm.
He won it with a broken friggin' arm.
Yes.
Ratings notes, Collision did 579,000 viewers, 0.20 in the demo on Saturday night. So they were even in viewership, down 8% in the demo, 24% drop in 18 to 34. But I would state a 0.2 you have to be happy with on a Saturday night. And thus far, they had the really strong number for week 1. And then, all but the Hamilton shows, I would say have been good numbers. I would classify them as good numbers minus the Hamilton show, which, you can look at that as an aberration. The next time Punk does not wrestle on the show, do we see a similar drop? Because all these other episodes have featured Punk matches.
Could be this Saturday.
You're right. We will see this Saturday because all they have announced so far is the trios title match for Saturday. And I really feel the idea of leaving more match announcements to Rampage. I really feel for Collision, you need to have at least a 1-2 lineup for Collision by Wednesday to set that audience into the weekend, knowing what's happening. Because this Saturday could be tough. I don't know if that trios match is necessarily drawing everybody in, regardless of what gets announced on Friday night. Raw did 1,855,000 viewers and a 0.57. So in line with what they have been doing. They were up 3% in viewers, 2% in the demo. And this was not having to contend with the home run derby. But looking at Raw, just year to year, they continue to be up significantly, especially with the younger viewers. And then the really interesting number was Tuesday's NXT that did 746,000 viewers, 0.21 in the demo, up 11 and 9% respectively. And this also was their second largest number of the entire year behind the Seth Rollins Braun Breaker episode from a few weeks ago. Men 18 to 34 was up 37%, although women in that demo down 28%. So I don't know what that says about Dominic, but Dominic's that final quarter got a big bump with a Dominic and Wes Lee. It was clearly Dominic going for the title. That was the attraction on this show, and Dominic winning the North American title, which certainly the numbers would suggest a short or even extended run with Dominic on NXT, not the worst idea. Judgment Day is as hot as it's ever been. And I think this could be something great for Dominic. And, it shows like an interest in Dominic here that I don't think would necessarily command this interest on Raw.
I think it's perfect for everybody. I think everybody wins coming out of this. Dominic is a type of star that he doesn't have to be booked strong in order to be used, a lot and to gain a lot of value out of. I mean, you saw it with the Cody program where, the guy never really been booked strong, but nonetheless, I think attracted a decent amount of attention for a Cody program in between the Brock matches. That was successful, I would classify. And then his use here in NXT, he's not winning that much on Raw, but you put him in NXT, he becomes that much more of a bigger deal. And despite not winning that much on Raw, gets some of the biggest reactions, on really any program that he appears on. But on NXT, he feels like a big star. The North American title is a title that is kind of like, it's valuable to somebody who hasn't been on the main roster, but like somebody who has like a Solo Sikoa or now Dominic Mysterio, it's a great prop. And it's a great sort of like just, reason to be able to say, look at the Judgment Day. They've got a ton of gold. And it's a great attraction for NXT. So I think everybody wins. And you would think that Wesley would come out of this with something as well, whether it be, an eventual win over Dominic, or maybe he advances over to the world title picture. I can't imagine he'd be just left behind as a result of this. So potentially, I think everybody could benefit.
Maybe he's going to go back to like depressed Wesley out in the ocean, and then we're going to see him like watching Impact Wrestling on his phone with Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz back reunited.
I feel like he's in a better spot, but it's always possible. Yeah.
I also want to mention on NXT, first with Dominic, it was a great little tie-in having Tony D'Angelo pass by Dominic and, mention like someone at prison saying hi to Dominic or whatever. Yeah. The whole Tony D'Angelo thing, like they've done a very good job with this. Like the way they have laid out this story and the plan with him and Channing Lorenzo, and they did the flashbacks to tie it all together. I thought like a lot of thought went into this story and making it make sense by the end of the whole thing, which you don't typically get something spread out over 6 weeks like this. And it felt like it had a culmination to it. And now they're going for the tag titles. Like there was a purpose behind it.
And if you're going to tell a prison story, I mean,
it's one of the best prison stories we've gotten in wrestling in a while.
Yeah. I'm glad you like it.
Not your cup of tea. That's fine.
Not necessarily.
Also, in Canada, NXT did 94,600 viewers. It was fourth for the night in sports. And of the data I have for NXT, there might be the odd week we didn't get data for, but of what I have, which is most of it, this is the highest number for NXT in Canada. And the replay at 11 p.m. ranked in the top 10 for sports. So there was certainly interest in both countries. Maybe that it certainly endorses Dominic as the North American champion, the fact he's drawing in both countries.
I think he should promote that fact in his next promo.
And Dark Side of the Ring did 178,000 viewers, 0.06. So a bounce back after falling last week for the Adrian Adonis episode. This was the fourth most watched episode of the season behind JYD, Doink, and the Grams. G1 Climax, they are 4 days through and they return on Friday, so they have a day off. Wait, are you caught up on G1 or you have fallen behind?
I've very much fallen behind. I mean, I've realized it's either raise an 11-month-old child or keep up with the G1, and I've chosen the former at the moment.
Well, we're all happy that you have made that decision because, there was certainly some stuff to see on these two shows. I thought that Wednesday's show was the weakest one so far. The first half of the show, extremely skippable, but it got better towards the latter half. So they're back on Friday in Niigata, and we've got a lineup that includes Sonata against Yota Tsuji, a rematch from Dominion, Kazuchika Okada against Taichi, Shota Umino and Kaito Kiyomiya, Will Ospreay against Kenta, Chase Owens against Hikuleo, El Phantasmo takes on Great Okan, Gabe Kidd versus Ren Narita, and Tangaloa against Yoshihashi. So that is all that's coming up, and a few undefeated records so far. The A block is led by Sonata and Kiyomiya. The B block has Okada and Taichi on top. C block, Evil and David Finlay. And then block D, Jeff Cobb and the best man on the mic this year, Zack Sabre Jr.
Mm-hmm.
It's a guarantee before the end of this G1, he's going to cut a promo supporting the writers.
You think so? Maybe.
I think he's definitely on the side of the writers for sure.
Okay. Just if you're finding it maybe as daunting to keep up with every single match in the G1 as I am, we do have match recommendations on all of our G1 podcast show descriptions. So if you simply go to postwrestling.com/G1 and just look for the show, you don't even have to be a patron to look for these. Simply click on the show descriptions, and then you can see which matches out of the card that our hosts for that particular episode would recommend watching. So I might have to rely on that a bit just to keep up with the past 2 nights.
Yes, always great to have the recommendations there for people that are in a pinch. And the last thing, as we look at this ROH card that we're reviewing on Friday night, so far we've got Claudio Castagnoli against an opponent to be announced that I would imagine will be announced pretty soon, maybe even by the end of this show. Samoa Joe against Shane Taylor or Dalton Castle. If you've read ahead, you know who the opponent is. Katsuyori Shibata against Daniel Garcia for the Pure Championship. Athena versus Willow Nightingale for the Women's Championship. And then a 4-way, which Tony Khan has now stated, they don't do fatal 4-ways. It's 4-ways in AEW. No one will die as a result.
He's suggesting that that's a WWE branding that he didn't want to adopt. And I mean, it's been fatal 4-way for so long to me that I didn't even question it, but okay, sure.
So it is the Lucha Brothers defending the tag titles against the Kingdom, Mike Bennett and Matt Taven, Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, and Aussie Open. So Mark Davis is back on this card on Friday night, and we will see what else is added. They have 5 matches official and probably a bunch more that will be thrown on there for Friday night's card in Trenton, New Jersey, the Cure Insurance Arena.
Yes.
Always great to have a insurance company.
I thought Tony Khan's answer about just his struggles with putting this card together was really a really good answer from Tony Khan.
I thought this was one of Tony Khan's best calls with the media. I thought he was very open about whatever he was asked. There were not any kind of non-answers, I would say, and I thought he gave like a lot of good insight on a ton of things. And yeah, so originally this was going to be Claudio and Eddie Kingston. And Eddie Kingston really wanted to do the G1. And I mean, there are not too many promoters that if they had a pay-per-view main event scheduled, just be tough. It's just a bad time for us.
And the story had already been going. This whole thing up until this point has been building Claudio and Eddie.
Yeah. Here we're thinking about like Blood and Guts, which I would think that Eddie would have also been in Blood and Guts tonight on top of that. And then doing with the two on the opposite
sides.
This
would have been the perfect setup for Death Before Dishonor. Yeah.
So instead,
and it's a Blood and Guts build that started last Blood and Guts.
Exactly. You're tying in last year's finish with when the two are on the same team together. So Eddie Kingston is allowed to do the G1, and Tony even sought out like an option that Eddie could fly home to do Friday's Death Before Dishonor show and then go back for his match on Sunday. And he's not on Friday's G1 card, but the logistics of doing that were just insane. And Eddie Kingston would have been his head would have been spinning if he had to pull off that flight in that short window.
God, it's not even like, it's not like flying to Tijuana for a weekend like Kenny did and then coming back and working the AEW schedule. I mean, a flight to Japan is in the midst of the G1. Let the man rest. It's fine.
So then the plan was Mark Briscoe, and I guess he's had like a nagging knee injury for a while, and he finally just had to tell them that he can't go and he's going to be out. So they had just a plethora of problems, and we'll get whatever the main event is announced soon from AEW. But here we are with 48 hours to go, and the main event, I think by the end, like they certainly shot the angle with Claudio and PAC, but if you were someone that is like, this was not in your plans for Friday night, other than one mention from Excalibur during the Blood and Guts match, like you have no idea about this ROH pay-per-view. And it's just,
which seems to be in line with the way ROH pay-per-views have been promoted as of late, hasn't it? And I do wonder how much of that is because it's in direct competition with AEW Rampage. Like, does TNT or TBS have a problem with them pushing this too much?
Well, I mean, tonight's mentions, like there was nothing directing you other than Claudio's defending the title on pay-per-view this Friday night, but no information, no graphics, nothing. I would think that, at the very least you use your show, which is such a contrast to like some of those early ROH pay-per-views where the complaint from fans was there was too much ROH content on the show. And now it's the polar opposite. I would think there's maybe some happy medium in there, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. We don't know. We don't know, like, what Turner might have told them in between that time. Whatever. I mean, this show is very, very much sold to like more of a hardcore fan base than even AEW. And the past ones have done, I would say, relatively well for Ring of Honor standards, just with a last minute build. But it also had Briscoes versus FTR, which is already sort of like a program that's building itself. This card does not really have anything like that.
Well, let's get into Blood and Guts from the TD Garden, their first time running this venue in Boston, and it was a big win for them. The last update from WrestleTix had this up to 8,919 tickets distributed. So this, I believe, passes Seattle. So this would be the number 3 TV crowd of the year behind the Kia Forum in January and the United Center last month for the debut of Collision. So this was a tremendous number for AEW to draw in Boston. And it would suggest to me, Wai, that they probably book the TD Garden when they come back to Boston.
Sure. I mean, how much of it is Blood and Guts, and can they replicate something?
I would say this is all Blood and Guts. Like this has steadily increased from the announcement on.
Well, can they do this well without Blood and Guts, or would they look to, have something just as big as a special attraction?
I think you draw a number like this and you have the confidence that you come back in 6 months and that you're going to retain a lot of this audience that came. And I mean, this crowd was amazing, just amazing. Like we got some great crowds this week. We had, I don't even know what you would list as your best matches of the week, but what a loaded week when you incorporate everything and you throw this Blood and Guts into things. We are sponsored by Shark Week that kicks off on Sunday, hosted by Jason Momoa.
Yeah. A lot of drama with Aquaman too, it sounds like. Stuck in post-production hell. They're on like their 3rd set of reshoots, and it's been in post-production for like 18 months now at this point. So
do you see what they're projecting Barbie at this weekend? This thing's going to
150?
be, yeah, it's like it's just steadily climbing and climbing.
I feel it, man. I feel the buzz.
Is Christopher Nolan going to take it on the chin this weekend, or do you think they'll hold their own?
I'm thinking Barbie does a lot better.
Barbie's going to win. It's just a question of by how much.
Right. I mean, is it even? You're right. Like, I mean, you look at Chris Nolan versus Barbie. Like, I don't know, 6 months ago, I would have said, yeah, the Chris Nolan movie. Who's going to watch the Barbie movie? But
a lot of people are going to watch the Barbie movie. Word
of mouth helps, and I think having family friendly option helps for a lot of people.
Well, we did not get the sounds of Barbie Girl or anything, because first we hear Baltimora for the last time as the music ends. And there's Jungle Boy out in the sweltering desert of Massachusetts, known for their hot deserts and cavernous land. And
they didn't say this was. He didn't say he did this right before the match.
This was weeks ago. This was somewhere else. He's out in the desert.
Could have been a few days ago.
When Danielson and Yuta were out there doing neck bridges. So he's who's he burying here? Was that indicated, or was this just symbolic of his?
So I mean, Excalibur said that he buried his boots, but I feel like I saw a body attached to those boots.
That's what I thought. I didn't have time to rewind this, but I thought I saw someone going in here too.
I think it was metaphorical.
Yeah,
he buried Jungle Boy basically.
So
he buried Baltimora.
That's it. Yeah, the rights in perpetuity were put underground. So this limo pulls up, and he gets into the back of the limo. And that obviously is, will reveal itself in time. Whoever is.
You think so? You think that was an actual thing? The driver?
Someone coming to pick him up?
Well, maybe you just hired a cab. Maybe you just called Uber X.
It's been consistent every week. A driver has gotten him out of trouble with Hook. So I think it's only natural that someone is revealed down the road. So how do you follow up Baltimora? The only way you can go. You just continue down the alphabet to Beethoven. And there we go with his Beethoven's Fifth that Jungle Boy came out to. And it seemed the internet was mixed on this new song. I guess you're supposed to hate this. You're not supposed to have a positive reaction to Beethoven.
I suppose so. I think it's fine. Like, it's recognizable. It's kind of unique.
I hear it's free.
Oh, okay. I guess it depends on the recording, right? Like you might have to pay for the specific recording, but I guess the actual rights would have lapsed a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. So he comes out to this. It was fine. Like it's a difference, and everyone knew that the change was coming. Baltimore, their days were numbered.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's Hook against Jungle Boy, and right from the get-go, like this crowd, they sounded incredible on this show, and they were so electric for the start of this match. You would think this was the main event. And Hook goes after him with body shots, and then Jungle Boy rakes the eyes. Taz was great in this. You know, we talked about how difficult Renee had to struggle calling Dean Ambrose matches in WWE, and it was just so clunky. And I don't think we take for granted just how seamless it is for Taz. We all know it's his son. We don't hide from it, but it's also he's not caught up in it. And this was a perfect example of it. Like he's calling it, but he's not freaking out. It's like his son's a wrestler and he knows that he applauds, you know, that was a smart move to rake my kid in the eyes. And I think Taz was really strong here, but not to the degree of overshadowing either.
It helps that Taz's character, at least in AEW, is really that of a coach. And when you're coaching, you're essentially kind of like talking about things from the sidelines. And you're not one to, especially as a babyface, want to get involved at all. So he's basically, you know, you're watching like soccer match with like, you know, one of the players' dads at whatever community center, you know.
I would love to have Taz coaching soccer.
Sure. Yeah.
And have him mic'd. So they end up on the apron, and this leads to Hook T-boning Jungle Boy off the apron and into this poor cameraman who just takes it, nails the camera. And Perry then hits a draping DDT on the floor. Hook pops up from a German, and he hits a bridging German, and he holds on for the grip, hits another one, and then Jungle Boy grabs Paul Turner and can low blow Hook. Hits the running elbow to the back of the head for a great near fall. Crowd extremely heated. Jungle Boy grabs the FTW title and gets worn by Turner, and into a head and arm choke they go, and they run into Turner. And with the referee down, Hook hits a suplex and he has the match won, but there's no one to count. So Hook then gets nailed with the belt, and Jack Perry climbs on top, and he's got the biggest grin on his face as Turner counts 3 in 11 minutes and 41 seconds. Jungle Boy is the new FTW champion.
Mm-hmm. I thought this was good. You know, I haven't really been all that impressed with Perry's sort of out of the ring heel work at all, but in ring, clearly he has a much higher comfort level with playing a good guy or a bad guy. And I thought this was a really good first outing for him as a heel in a big singles match. I think the presentation refresh, you know, with the video package, with the music, and I think with his new look with his beard and tied back hair, I thought it all worked for me. You know, whether or not you loved him coming out to Beethoven's Fifth. I mean, the point is, do you see a refreshed character? Are you paying a different attention to him than you did before? And for me, the answer was yes. I thought his in-ring intensity as a heel was also really solid. He does come across a little like generic bad guy to me, at least in the way he's booked with some of the like pretty generic heelisms. But I thought he did a good job with, you know, playing the old hits basically. And the booking made sense because he's on a brand new path. You want to establish him. You want to give Hook somebody to chase. I thought tonight was a positive overall.
Yeah, I think that Jack Perry is like, this is step one of a multi-step process. I think of him finding himself as a heel that he's going to have to do on national television, but you couldn't ask for a crowd that took to him better. There was no fighting with the crowd. They had the clearly defined babyface and Hook, and they hated Jack Perry. So from that sense of it, it worked. And I'm happy to see where he's at thus far. And this is probably a good level to have him at. It's not as though they're shoving him into the world title picture or something he is not capable or ready for.
The FTW title is very much like AEW's version of the North American Championship in NXT. You're not really losing anything by taking it off of somebody. Hook was not doing anything with it whatsoever. While as, you know, Jack Perry taking it off of Hook actually means something, at least tonight. So yeah, let's see if this feud continues.
Dominic and Hook. That's going to be like this generation. Like,
Dom has said he wanted that match.
Could you imagine what a match
point
that would be with the fathers coaching?
Yes.
Maybe they could have a soccer game. Alex Marvez, who is just becoming like a parody now of a reporter. He's chasing down the hottest story. So he spies on Jericho and Don Callis having a meal together, and Callis is showing something on his phone, probably showing, look at this guy taking me down, thinking this was real. No mention, no footage of that attack, or even like Takeshita attacking Omega. Like, what was the purpose of this angle that they shot at Triple Mania?
I guess that's a good question. I can understand not wanting to glorify, like what is basically sort of like a fan attack or something that's unprovoked.
Yeah,
why
I can get that, but the Takeshita part, I mean, that feeds into the match tonight. Like, what was the purpose of sending Takeshita for this whole thing?
Well, maybe he just wanted a trip to Tijuana. I hear it's a fun town.
Okay, yeah, well, he got it then. Taz explains they spot Marvez, they kick him out. Taz explains, I don't want to be on camera right now, and he's still selling like the effects of like that last match and seeing his son lose. So again, I thought Taz was very good. Then we go to the latest bro hang. Last night, MJF and Adam Cole, they are outside of a restaurant that is revealed as the legendary Kowloon's in Massachusetts. And MJF,
I would love to go at this point. Like I had only kind of recently learned about it and how like it really is, like it feels like it's such a landmark for wrestlers that wrestle in the Boston area. Like it feels like it's like Boston's version of like Ribera, I'd love to see it.
Well, they serve spicy food and alcohol is what we learned, disguised as water. So Adam Cole wants MJF to face his fear of eating spicy food. It's one thing to not care for spicy food. It's another thing to fear it.
I could see it. Well, what do you mean? Do you have a fear of poutine?
No, I just don't like it, but it does not keep me up at night. I'm not frightened by the sight of it.
Well, he's scared of spicy food.
Well, he gave in pretty easily here. MJF is telling him the story of slamming Big Bill in the Saskatoon Silverdome, and then their food arrives, and they're eating their spicy food, and it's really hot, and then they need water, and as they're chugging down the water, the waiter informs them it's 100% alcohol.
So they should be dead right now.
Yeah. This was like 100 proof. Okay. So they're like, this was just, they gave them moonshine here to wash down their food. We get a time lapse and they're drunk.
Yeah.
My favorite Adam Cole. Cole playing drunk.
Acting.
He wasn't any better this week than he was last week, but we're just running with it at this point. And they start to look at the waiter. And Cole thinks he looks like Sammy Guevara. MJF disagrees, says he's a dead ringer for Garcia. And we end this segment with the two of them getting up and apparently landing a double clothesline on this waiter that we never get to see. So they perfected it the night before, while drunk, and avoided a hangover the next day for this match.
Yeah. How you typically prepare for a match, sure. Yeah, these are incredibly corny, and I think in some ways they make this show look kind of cheap, especially like involving your world title program in these sort of segments. But they're fun, and I think the more you lean into the corniness and the cheapness of it all, the more it becomes kind of endearing. And most importantly, these end up like resulting in the great types of reactions you see in the matches like we saw last week and especially tonight. They're effective and they work.
They performed well, these segments last week. And I mean, clearly this has like, I'm not the biggest fan of these segments, but it would be wrong to deny that they are working. And this audience, like, they really want to see these two become friends and they're totally into it. And there's a lot we'll get into the match of just like what a simple layout and demonstration of tease your fans with something, make them want it, and then give it to them. And this crowd it was something to watch. Marvez is waiting outside. Callis and Jericho pull up together in a limo, and they called Marvez an idiot and won't answer if Jericho has signed with Callis. Britt Baker takes on Kayla Sparks. This was just nothing. She came in, sling blade, puts on the glove, swinging neckbreaker, and lockjaw in 1:06. Just a self-contained, nothing match, no angle, no promo, just Britt Baker on the show.
I don't know what purpose like this was serving. Like, I don't know what program Britt's currently like involved with or will be involved with in the future. I don't like usually these sort of like squash matches are to set up promos or to set up angles.
There's none of that. There was really no purpose to this.
Other than maybe like fulfilling your quota for one women's wrestling match on this program, perhaps. And what a match, I guess, like
I mean, are you
not
really
60
satisfying
seconds.
that critic?
Well, that's it, like why couldn't she have at least cut a promo or something?
Well, that was all. Kayla Sparks. Extra credit to Excalibur, who had to pivot from Ricky Starks to Kayla Sparks when he was recapping the Owen tournament. Renee is with MJF and Adam Cole, and Cole says they caught lightning in a bottle, and MJF says their plan A is hitting the double clothesline, and unlike Sammy Guevara and his wife, we don't need plan B.
That's a good line.
So he has surprised Adam Cole. He got him matching trunks, but then Cole got him matching jackets. And he also has another surprise he's going to have to wait for. And as they take off, in walks Roderick Strong, who is becoming like the most comedic character on this show with the neck brace on. Adam! And Adam doesn't even stop. He's moved on with MJF and he has nothing to say to Renee. This guy who is flying across the country every week with like bulging disc in his neck and just can't even get a conversation with Adam Cole.
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to feel about Roderick Strong at this point. I mean, like, am I supposed to be laughing at him?
I think at this point, yes, he is a bit comedic.
But like, is he not supposed to play like the conscience of Adam Cole? Like, why is he supposed to be a comedic character?
Yeah, and what happened with the argument with Britt Baker last week with Cole? She was upset and nothing this week.
What argument?
Remember when she called him on the phone after seeing the spot where MJF messed up with the women?
They must have settled things back home.
Okay. MJF and Adam Cole against Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia, the Blind Eliminator Finals. And in the history of pro wrestling on cable television, we have never had such contrasting matches air back-to-back as the two we are about to review.
Yeah.
Jericho comes out to Judas and he waves off the song and this crowd continues singing the lyrics and man, were they loud. And he joins commentary, says he's still negotiating with Don Callis and he's here to watch Guevara and Garcia. MJF comes out to his music and then awaiting Adam Cole, his music starts again, but it's not just his regular theme. It's a mashup of the two men's themes together as Adam Cole comes out. And I'm assuming that Mikey Ruckus was busy over the last couple of weeks making this tune.
I would assume. Yeah, sure. I mean, he was responsible for most of AEW's music. I thought it was great. What a lovely surprise, I think this should happen anytime two single stars are put into a tag team. And I'm saying mashup, okay? Not the sort of excuse of like, what do they do for like some of these big show like teams that were just like straight up cuts that were just god awful that the WWE used to do. Remember they used to do this?
Yes.
They would just like hard cut between like one song to another, like with no musicality it like put into it at all. This was great. This was like, and we all know this team's going to break up eventually, everybody, but man, like every little detail you put into something like this, matching tights, matching jackets, t-shirts, it's just taking that sort of like, it's making that breakup that much more effective whenever it happens.
It's the whole point of this. Like everyone knows what's coming, but you have to convince the audience that these two have such a friendship that you don't want to see them break up. Like you're giving people the reason that they're friends so that it will mean that much more that you're actually invested in these two being friends. So this whole place, they're chanting double clothesline, which is amazing. And Garcia and MJF start doing a dance off and this crowd is going nuts for this. And then MJF calls for a dance-off. He goes down to the timekeeper section and starts playing music. And we get Garcia and Guevara dancing. And this, I can't even properly describe, but they had a whole routine down here. Don't know if they'd get a 10 on execution, but they certainly did on effort. And then Adam Cole came in, and this man is like the world's worst dancer and ends with a record scratch and then the JAS attack them and the match begins. But this was right out of a PWG or, some of those Mania weekend cards that was I'm sure some people will lose their mind over how they started this, but man, this crowd was electric for this.
This was a risk for sure, right? Especially like talking to like doing it in front of an AEW audience that is going to criticize every single thing that doesn't necessarily fit into what they want their professional wrestling to be. And I almost wonder at this point, did they just put this in there to specifically piss those people off, just to be able to say, hey, like, this is what professional wrestling could be. It was fun. Like this entire program has been. The tone of this entire thing has been slapsticky, and this crowd has been eating it up. And I think something as ridiculous as this perfectly fit into what this feud has been so far.
We've been seeing this over the last month where Dynamite, it's been focusing on a lot more outside of the ring character work, and MJF and Adam Cole has been example one of that, and this certainly continued that. Do you think that this is a concerted effort to differentiate this with Collision that is starting to get this reputation as being a more traditional meat and potatoes wrestling show? And this has coincided with Dynamite taking, like, these are segments that you would have, I don't think, ever seen on AEW in year one or two. And they're getting much more, I think, free to do stuff like this. And the MJF and Cole stuff, like, there's certainly going to be an audience that hates this stuff, but it is also character work that seems to be working for them. And this match certainly was evidence.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, you're also going to get MJF and Cole having a match on Saturday, so how much of it is it a concerted effort to separate Dynamite from Collision, and how much of it is just what we've always known with AEW, and that's, every feud, basically every performer kind of having their own style and their own, especially up top, their own direction to change tones. If they
will they try and have a dance off with FTR in Hartford?
I think that one's a bit more unlikely. But are there going to be comedic elements about Saturday's show? I'm sure there will be. I'm sure the double clothesline will be a big spot.
So the match itself begins, and MJF just starts running the ropes and puts up his arms. Like, MJF in these matches, it's amazing because, like, this whole match, it was, when you consider who's in this match, this was like the safest match and done with like maximum reactions. It was like they have it all figured out, and this audience just ate it up, and they could just get the most out of the least in this match. And it was amazing to watch this, like, just like the over the topness of MJF doing the dramatic fall onto Sammy's groin, and just for any reaction, they would call for the double clothesline. And this audience, like, they were going to lose their minds when this double clothesline was finally hit. So Jericho is getting frustrated seeing his team getting with Garcia and Guevara getting, controlled by Cole and MJF. MJF teased the crossroads at one point, and then after Garcia applies a Dragon Slayer on Cole, he reaches the ropes and stomps Cole's knee. Both are on the floor, and Cole tries to get MJF to dive, and he goes to run the ropes, can't do it. So Cole urges him again, and MJF hits a suicide dive. And this dive is probably, like, on the list of dives you've seen in AEW, this would probably rank somewhere around 250th. Reaction wise, it was among the highest. This place went insane, and there's quite the lesson to learn there.
It got as much reaction as Commander doing his, springboard, double jump, shooting star press type of thing. It's a big difference, though, because, once you're over, you can really get away with the simplest thing, right? And guys who don't have that mic time nor the talent and the ability of an MJF to, talk and to perform in non-wrestling segments aren't going to have that luxury. They do have to do springboard, shooting star presses, and things like that.
There's a Panama Sunrise to Garcia, and then they call for the double clothesline. And when they hit this was just an insane reaction. And it was like, what, 2 weeks of just teasing people, and they gave it to them. 10 minutes and 43 seconds. They win, and they will now face FTR on July 29th on Collision. And then Garcia and Guevara, they brush past Jericho on the ramp, leaving him out there. And Bryce hands the title, the AEW title, to Adam Cole. MJF's back is turned. He turns around, sees Cole with the title, rips it away, and they start to argue. And the crowd's chanting, "Hug it out." And they do hug it out. but there is this close-up look of MJF looking distrustful of Adam Cole. And then we get FTR coming out and they all go face-to-face, no physicality. And that's the match coming up in 10 days.
Really, really fun match. I'll be the first to admit I was not really into like this comedic nature of this MJF's Cole program, you know, especially coming off of their draw and how intense that rivalry seemed like it was going to be. To kind of take things over to this sort of slapsticky comedic tone, I thought was going to be a real risk and a potential mistake. And watching that first skit last week, those first skits, you know, the first few weeks, I kind of felt the same thing. But the biggest thing that really changed my mind was seeing the result in the ring and seeing how these crowds have completely ate up what these guys have served them. Every little thing that they've been leading these audiences into, this audience and myself included have been eating it all up. It's been working so well, and it tells you the value of those vignettes, as cheesy as they may look. Maybe it's the cheesiness that, you know, has kind of, you know, made them so I don't know, attractive to an audience. Everything has worked, and by the time the turn happens, this thing will be intense, just as more intense than it probably was going to be anyway.
Yeah, I think the question now becomes, whatever your timeline was, do you extend that? If this thing is working, it would feel as though a breakup and doing the match at one of the all in, all outs, like that almost feels like you could ride this out with these two. But you're also on this timeline that you have these shows coming up, and that would seem the most logical destination to get to the match.
The 1-2 of having, you know, all in plus all out makes you really wonder how they're going to play this thing. You know, first of all, do you think we have a title change on Saturday?
I'll guess no if they're keeping with this timetable, but I don't think it's the worst idea at all to.
I certainly don't think it's out of the question. I hate it whenever a tag team title is used as a prop to further a singles, you know, feud. And maybe AEW will avoid that, especially since it's FTR, especially since the tag division is so hot right now.
This is one program where I think the AEW title is actually a detriment to this program. I think this would be a lot cleaner without this being the world title program that is caught in this, that you could ride this tag team out for a lot longer and put the belts on them for a month or two.
But the big money program coming out of this, hopefully, this is all in service to make MJF versus Adam Cole that much bigger, right? So the big question is where that match takes place. Do you peak it at All In, or do you somehow have them maybe lose the tag titles at All In and then you can do the match at All Out? Don't know. We'll see how they play it.
They recap the Owen finals, and we got Jushin Liger getting some FaceTime on Dynamite here in this recap package.
God,
and then
weird.
Poor Liger, like nothing taped. Like they didn't even have like some clip of him here. You know,
I think this is all to set up his comeback from retirement. Okay, Liger versus Starks. He's got reason now to come back.
You cost me 20 hours of flight time to come to Calgary. Renee is with the best friends, Darby and Nick Wayne, and she goes over. Chris Statlander is defending the TBS title against Marina Shafir on Rampage. Darby and Nick Wayne are in the Royal Rampage and notes that Orange Cassidy has the night off. And Darby asks Orange for a favor to give his friend AR Fox a title shot, who took him in when he was homeless. And Orange Cassidy agrees to defend the title against AR Fox that they said would happen next week. And so that is what we have coming up, presumably on Wednesday. Chompy, the shark mascot, came out, and Taz did not want to be touched by Chompy. Also on Rampage, we've got the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass against QT, Aaron Solo, and Johnny TV. And Collision has the Trios title match with House of Black against the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass. More matches to be announced on Rampage.
You find it interesting that the Royal Rampage winner is getting a TNT shot at All Out and not
All Out. They mentioned the winner gets. So that is, that's a really long time for this winner to kind of hover as the challenger.
And does it suggest that there might not be a TNT title defense on All In, or will that champion be determined, or that challenger be determined?
I think it's just a case of who will be champion come All Out. This is the guaranteed challenger. I don't think they put that belt on ice for a month.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Blood and Guts. This was mostly the whole second hour of the show, starting off with Claudio Castagnoli, who had been on a training sabbatical to get ready for this week and looked in tremendous shape. Second was Kenny Omega, and they get the 5-minute period. And chance of use this ring, as Claudio would deny the fans seeing Kenny in this other ring.
The poor fan sitting on the other side because all the action was taking place in the ring closest to the ramp.
Well, Omega finally tossed Claudio into the other ring. They got plenty by the end of the night. PAC was in third, so it's 2-on-1 against Kenny. Hangman is fourth, and he comes in checking on his former partner, Kenny Omega, and they are able to even up the numbers. Number 5, Jon Moxley, who won a NAGA tournament on the weekend and thought, you know what? Let's go all out on Wednesday night. This guy, I think Jon Moxley and Matt Jackson had their respective death wishes for this show. Like, what can we do in this match that can separate us from life? That was the goal. So Moxley comes in, and at first you think he's got the screwdriver, but it's a fork as he starts stabbing Hangman. And as you mentioned, I could very well believe that this guy is a Dark Side viewer and felt, why not? Let's change it up with a fork. And then he hands a fork over to Claudio, and Moxley gets a bucket and dumps broken glass onto the mat. This is around 9:15. So we got like glass spots throughout the next 35 to 40 minutes of Dynamite. And I think just about everyone took glass spots in this match.
Right. We would assume work glass.
We hope, yes. Nick Jackson was 6th, and he comes out, and Nick, some of his highlights included this leaping cutter to PAC and then a Rana that sends Claudio off the top onto the glass. And then Moxley lifts and dumps Nick onto the glass, stomps it on his chest. And this is when Moxley's like vest comes off, and we see him wearing a Jun Kasai shirt as I guess his spirit animal for this match. Wheeler Yuta is out 7th, followed by Matt Jackson, and Moxley is bleeding at this point. And there's a Kotaro Crusher to Yuta on the glass. Omega lands as well. Konosuke Takeshita is 9th, which means Don Callis joins commentary. And Moxley brings out a bed of nails and sets this thing up in the corner. And Omega takes a shotgun dropkick. And dude, this guy flies into this bed of nails. And the whole crowd is chanting, holy shit. Though the best call was Tony Schiavone. What the hell are we doing? And Moxley then body slams Omega onto the bed of nails.
Mm-hmm. So. Great reaction to any of the bed of nails spots. I don't know if we've seen a bed of nails before in AEW. Have we?
I think that's a new one for AEW.
I mean, if it would have happened, I'm sure it would have happened in a Moxley match.
Do you think this was the compromise? Moxley wanted skewers. They said, no way. It's like, well, then I want bed of nails. Like, fine, the nails.
Yeah, I don't know. This didn't make it into the memo, so I would assume he had to have special clearance for the bed of nails.
We have one participant left, and when this countdown clock came up, dude, there was a roar from this audience as the countdown came, and in last is Kota Ibushi, involved in a match with Kenny Omega for the first time since December of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a tag match against Tanahashi and Ospreay. I will say, physically, Kota Ibushi certainly looks like he has lost some of his definition. I don't know if it's like he just has not been able to train as hard throughout this time. But I mean, this guy, and I mean, he's also getting older as well. But I mean, it was not his usual like ripped physique that we were accustomed to as well. But nonetheless,
I thought he looked similar to like the way he looked during WrestleMania weekend for GCW.
Yeah,
I think a very clear like lack of ability to train at the same level as he used to. All of this is kind of to be expected, you know, and I think it helped that he was one of 5 men here. I mean, in a very, very physical match, don't get me wrong, and he did a whole lot that was impressive here, but this is not yet the Kota Ibushi of old.
Yuta runs up the ramp to attack Ibushi and gets stopped. And then Ibushi enters, and dude, he just starts dropping guys with right hands, and he stares down Moxley, and this place is just on their feet. And Moxley is stepping on Omega's hand on the nails as he gives the middle finger to Ibushi. Like, everyone had like their moments, but to me, John Moxley to me was the star of this match. Like, he was at another level. Like, this was his environment, and he was like the ultimate deathmatch wrestler for this entire period. And I imagine he had a ton of contributions in terms of ideas, but just his presence in this match, I just thought was unmatched.
Completely, yeah. I mean,
And he's also dripping blood at this point, like from head to toe. Like his face is covered.
Well, he puts the blood and guts. You know, he probably puts the guts in blood and guts too. You know, he is really a remarkable wrestler, honestly. And I think the topic of blood use in wrestling is one we'll probably get into quite a bit. You know, on the double shot coming up later. You know, if you're gonna use it, I would allow it in blood guts. I think if John Moxley is going to bleed, tonight was a good night to do it.
Well, Moxley gets dropped on the bed of nails by Ibushi, who follows with a standing moonsault to Moxley on the bed of nails. And we get Yuta and Matt Jackson climbing on top of the cage during the picture-in-picture, no less. And then Matt starts with the rolling Northern Lights, and he gets to the edge, and he's calling for one more. I was like, what is your plan? What is the plan here? And Yuta stopped him from going for one more Northern Lights.
This was insane. So last year, it was what? The big swing? Claudio doing the giant swing on top. Yeah, that was already crazy enough. And this year, they decided to have Matt Jackson's locomotion Northern Lights suplexes, which is an even scarier spot to see somebody perform, because you see the path and you think, like, obviously, like, he wasn't going to do it, but it's the tease of it that makes things so incredibly fun and suspenseful and scary. I thought it was just a wonderful use of like the top of the cage spot this year.
And then you cannot write this. This was just so perfect. Up comes a QR code, and it's a PSA for the Red Cross to donate blood. This was just amazing.
I don't know if this was intentional or not, but
it had to be.
Right?
It was just too perfect. So Claudio and PAC are setting up Hangman and Nick for like pile drivers or power bombs in the ring, and Matt is on top of the cage, and somehow he's got a bag of thumbtacks, so he just dumps them on top of Claudio and PAC, who take back body drops. The crowd has seen nails, they've seen tacks, they've seen forks. They start chanting for tables. And then a table is brought out, and they quickly move on to fire, which we didn't need fire in this match and did not get. Then we get a barrage of superplexes onto tacks and glass. PAC is dangling from the top of the cage, holding on, and comes down with a double foot stomp, putting Matt through a table between both rings.
Oh, that was so insane.
Oh, this was nuts. They do the standoff in the two rings, and then PAC takes a snapdragon on the glass, and Kenny goes for the one-winged angel, and it's turned into the brutalizer, which is how PAC beat Omega at the first All Out. And Callis was great with this line, brings up the bad neck that Kenny is working with on top of that. And we get the giant swing on Matt into a sharpshooter, and the Golden Elite are all trapped in submissions. Ibushi breaks free, and he saves all the team members, including lighting up Claudio with kicks. Moxley gets up, he goes over, he kisses the camera lens with the roving cameraman on the apron, and all this blood is on the lens, and this dude's got to wipe it off to get a clean shot for the remainder of this match, because they still got like 10 minutes.
Great shot, but gross. Yeah.
Just disgusting. Claudio and PAC then start getting into a shoving match, and they have to get in between them. PAC gives the finger, and he gets bolt cutters and cuts the door open, and he leaves. He walks out on the BCC. So I think that is certainly going to play itself out. And then Omega makes a big spirited comeback on everyone. Takeshita senses trouble, and Don Callis signals for him, and Takeshita abandons the team as well. So that would probably end the alliance with the BCC. There's a
and answers the question of whether or not they're actually in the BCC.
Yeah, I mean, that ends it. And I think it would also, by the end of this, you wonder, do the BCC stay as heels after this as well, after they're abandoned by their team and now they have a reason to go after those guys? But there's a buckshot to Claudio, another one to Yuta in the opposite ring, along with the combination V-trigger with Hangman to the back. And then we get a super kick to Yuta. It's just the death of Wheeler Yuta. They cuff Moxley, and Yuta gets rammed into Matt's shoe with the tacks, and Hangman chokes out Yuta with a chain. 50 minutes and 52 seconds as Kansas plays us out. And Claudio is there helping up Yuta. Ibushi is getting into Moxley's face, and like a dozen matches that come out of this potentially based on everyone's availability. And I mean, this was spectacular.
The end. Tony afterwards also made mention that it was Mox who surrendered to save Wheeler Yuta. So your theory about a potential BCC babyface turn, I think, is very possible, just simply based off of that sort of note alone. Like the leader wanting to protect, rather than seek more violence. To the youngest in the group.
And if you do Claudio and PAC on Friday, I mean, Claudio is the clear babyface in that scenario. And yeah, they really babyfaced Moxley by, at the end here, saving his teammate.
I would say PAC is relatively undefined. Like we don't even like
he walked out on them.
Heel. I mean,
he was clearly the heel at the end.
It might have been. But it might have been like he got so pissed off. Like they're all heels, and it was a heel walking out on a heel. And in either case, this elite BCC feud appears to be done at this point. And is there anything more left for the BCC to do as heels once you've got this big feud out of the way? Maybe now is actually the time for a babyface turn. Maybe they were teasing it at the end here. I kind of felt like the PAC Claudio rift was kind of forced, and you can understand why. I mean, they probably had no reason to feud while Mark Briscoe was still an active participant in Death Before Dishonor. So I think they did their best to try to create that rivalry from the start of this match over to the end. And it was fine. Like in the end, for something like a Ring of Honor, is the match going to be hot? And I think the PAC versus Claudio match is decently pretty hot. This match was amazing.
It was amazing. I just wanted to add that I guess after they went off the air, the remaining BCC members and the Elite, they all shook hands in the middle of the ring. So
there you go.
The moral of the story
is it's a babyface turn. I mean, I think they wouldn't do that in front of a crowd unless they were I don't know, seeking some sort of storyline reason for it. So,
I would hope, Wai, that if I stabbed you in the head with a screwdriver, I would hope that we could go through our violent match and that you would at least shake my hand afterwards and you could forgive me for, stabbing you and making your life hell like that. It's a lesson, actually. And, adult men solving their problems.
I would Northern Lights suplex you in succession on top of the cage a few times first, but then we could shake hands.
I'd have it coming.
This match was chaotic. It was creative. It was violent, and it was a ton of fun.
I thought
50 minutes.
I thought it was definitely the best of the 3 Blood and Guts we've seen.
I'll take your word for it, but
last year's was really spectacular. I mean, the first one, it was such new territory for them to try in AEW. Like they've all been quality matches, but I thought this was just a step above. I mean, it was you had a lot of memorable moments in last year's as well, and another big crowd in Detroit. But this one, I mean, this was I couldn't believe how quick this went by as well. Like it was all of a sudden it's 10-2, and it was just a non-stop violent spectacle. It delivered everything it teased, and I just don't know how you follow future ones of these. Like the level.
I'll tell you how. You put Jon Moxley in there no matter what, okay? Like he is an essential ingredient at this point in these sort of matches, or at least somebody very like Jun Kasai. Maybe you bring him in. Like you kind of have promised that level of violence, and it's not just about blood loss. It's not just about violence in these types of matches. It's about incredible creativity, incredible planning of these spots, and incredible choreography of just these impressive athletic feats. On top of that, you had, I think, a very intriguing, I would say almost emotional, reunion between Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi. For a lot of longtime fans of the Golden Lovers, that was enough to increase a ton of interest alone. So every single second of this match, I think, offered something really worthwhile for people watching. And as a 50-minute TV segment, God, was it tremendously entertaining.
All right. Well, that was pretty spectacular edition of AEW Dynamite that had a wide range of matches and angles on the show. Let's get to feedback because we still have the double shot coming up. We have a few people here that want to chime in. Let us start off with Benjamin, who writes in, MJF and Cole against Sammy and Daniel Garcia was so entertaining and fun. Blood and Guts is chaotic fun. I hope everyone gets time off to recover. It's a little sad that AEW has 5 hours of programming now and could only squeeze in one short women's match on Dynamite tonight. Kind of figured Jack Perry's heel persona was going to be Hollywood Jack Perry. The music change was good. Not sure the FTW title has meaning, even after they contextualized its history in the show. AEW has too many titles.
Hollywood Jack Perry would probably be, I mean, a little too predictable. Plus the fact that like the man's just not an actor. He's from Hollywood, but he has like no credentials to his name, and it seems to, you know, maybe call for maybe a bit more of a flamboyant character that Jack Perry is just simply not. So
that sounds like an awkward fit, just without
and
seeing it.
I think branching off from like, you know, not being reminding people that, you know, he's Luke Perry's son is probably going to help him in the long run as well. Kenny says, I was at the show live and I hate to say it, but the tag match should have been the main event. Outside of the stunts, the crowd seemed to not know what to do during Blood and Guts, and nothing got the pop that the double clothesline did. Wrestling is funny. I also wonder if they needed to do a better job letting the average fan know who Ibushi was. Hook came off as a much bigger star. At the end of the night, Kenny made a speech, and the Elite and BCC all shook hands and hugged. A nice moment after a brutal match. It's interesting. Did that come across to you, John? Like
not in the least. They went nuts when that countdown clock came up. Everyone knew it was Ibushi coming in. I think that it was, I didn't sense at all that this crowd was not into this. They seemed pretty heated throughout this. Like it was very loud for the big spots in the tag match. But I mean, if I was laying this out, I would hate to have followed this. And I don't think the tag would have worked coming. I don't think anything would have worked coming out after this.
I agree. Could they have made a bigger deal of who Kota Ibushi was? I'm always in favor of introducing a video package or something just to kind of catch audiences up about, you know, why this is such a big deal. For me, at least, Ibushi seems like a bigger star than like a Vikingo would be, that I would assume the audience might know. But you're right. Like a lot of people would have no idea what the connection is and why he's supposed to be such a big deal and what the hell the Golden Elite even are. So I don't think that ever hurts. They didn't do it this time. There's a super chat here. Let's go to James sends $10. Thank you very much, James, for that support. He says, great show tonight. I just want to shout out Wai for the help of getting set up with a VPN. It greatly improved my viewing of Blood and Guts tonight. Thank you both for all you do. Not a problem. NordVPN.com/postwrestling. Give some love to one of the sponsors of this show in the past. And AEW Plus is really the best way, honestly, of watching these shows.
Let's go to Brian in New Jersey. Blood and Guts was wild and chaotic with some big memorable moments, but any real story to the match didn't really surface until the final minutes as PAC and Takeshita abandoned ship and the Golden Elite unleashed BCC-level violence with a 5-on-3 advantage. It also felt its length more. I thought Anarchy in the arena was better overall. I enjoyed MJF and Cole against Sammy and Danny even more. Blind Eliminator Tag might be the best tournament AEW has ever done. First, Baron Corbin meets himself in the woods on Tuesday, and tonight, Jack Perry buries Jungle Boy. A good amount of self-reflection this week. Yeah. Baron Corbin met this mystery man in the woods that turned out to be Baron Corbin on Tuesday, for those that did not see it. I thought, like, man, this is our redo of the Undertaker.
Doppelgangers exist in pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
What can I say? Let's go to Cody from Maine, who says, I've been to every AEW event held in Massachusetts over the last 4 years, including tonight's show. This was easily the hottest crowd the area has seen yet. Not sure of the reason for the Brit squash, but everything else delivered. The tag match was fantastic. Has it been a goofy detour for the world title picture? Yes, but I personally enjoy this type of goofy. The vast majority of the crowd were on their feet for the entirety of the main event, so I picked a bad morning for leg day, but what a spectacle. An event I won't forget for a long time.
All right, we go to Jordan from the Bronx. I won't get through all of this, but let's read some of his points. It's absurd how purely everything about Cole and MJF has been. Their matches have been straight out of 90s house show era wrestling, and it's fun. I could have done without the dance-off with the tag title shot at stake, but I can't argue with how the building reacted. Love the wrinkle at the end to keep their true natures intact. It'll be a bigger deal when they eventually break up. Shameful of AEW to get a Britt Baker squash in just to seemingly fill a quota as opposed to anything more consequential. For all that, they might as well have either put off the FTW title match for another day or not even done a women's segment at all. Blood and Guts continues to live up to its name, a bed of nails straight out of a Sonic game, glass raining thumbtacks, and yet the crowd still chanted for tables, and then when they got them, fire. I suspect that Danielson would have let Wheeler perish before he would ever have surrendered.
And let's go to Alexander from Portland, who also attended live. Very entertaining show. The tag match wasn't a great athletic showcase, but damn, was it fun. Jack Perry got great heel heat. Hook was pretty over too. The main event was hectic action, and Kenny cut a promo afterwards saying he wanted Ibushi in AEW again. Ibushi seems somewhat popular, but the "We Want Tables" chants seemed more over than anything Ibushi did. Similarly, there was a "We Want Fire" chant that got more over than Kota's entrance. Plenty of people in my area left after Dynamite, but I don't blame them because it's hard to follow a match like Blood and Guts. The Royal Rampage had some solid and surprising names in it, but it was hard to get invested since there were no stakes announced for the winner. Well, they did announce
maybe it wasn't in the building, but there were on television.
Yeah. Question: where do you see Hangman going from here? I could see the Bucks getting back into the tag title scene and Kenny getting revenge over Takeshita, but Hangman seems like the odd man out.
Yeah, I don't see a clear path of where he goes next.
So are we safe to assume that Ibushi is only like one and done for something like this?
If you want to read into that promo, like, it certainly was not a case of like he came out and then after the show up goes the graphic or anything like that. So yeah, I think that's certainly what people are going to take from that.
I think there's always some potential in, telling some sort of like, hey, like battle between Kenny's two tag team partners in Hangman and also Ibushi, or just any sort of combination or pairing between any of those. I think there's something there. I think the Elite have to stick together for a little bit, right? Like they just went through all that just to kind of band together to take on the BCC. I think a match with House of Black potentially is available. That's a huge money trios match. So
and probably something like quick with the Dark Order to get to the House of Black. Like you have that lingering. Sure. So I think that could maybe be your bridge program for TV, and maybe that gets you to the House of Black for one of the big shows.
Yeah. So I don't know if this person's officially been announced, but there's definitely a very surprising name for.
Why don't you just read it?
Minoru Suzuki is on Royal Rampage.
Okay.
He's in the Battle Royal, and apparently there's a face-off, anyway, he's actually in the graphic, so I'm not even, spoiling anything.
Yeah, I didn't look closely at the graphic. They did have the images there, so that's
yeah,
fun.
That could be fun.
Okay, let's go to Joshua from Arkansas. Hey guys, longtime cafe member, first time commenter. Just had to finally log in to say MJF Cole versus Sammy and Daniel was my favorite comedy match in a long time and on my short list for match of the year. The way MJF can milk the crowd as a fake babyface and build up so much drama for basic moves like the dive to the outside with the double clothesline. This guy's just on another level. Also, I want to give a shout out to both of you for your G1 coverage. I think journalists like you deserve a lot of credit for creating interest and generating revenue for this business. I can only speak for myself, but I wouldn't normally be spending time and money on things like the G1, GCW, or other indies, but your enthusiasm and expert coverage of events outside the WWE, AEW make it even more valuable for me to stay current on the world of wrestling. Keep up the great work. Oh, wait, that was from my parents. Thank you.
I never thought of us like that. Are we generating revenue for the industry? Are we really like
big draws? Okay.
Are we economy stimulators of professional wrestling? I didn't realize we were so important.
Yeah.
Wow.
We are. It's not inflation. It's the post effect. All right. Well, thanks for everyone's feedback. A lot of great points and feedback, and especially those that were there live. Quite a few of you in Boston.
We have a lot of listeners in Boston. It sounds
huge in Boston, and huge everywhere we go. And we hope that you will be going to the Post Wrestling Cafe, because in about 2 minutes we are going to be up chatting about Dark Side of the Ring from Tuesday night. We don't sleep, we don't stop, and we record everything. So that's coming up. And then the next time you will hear us is Rewind-A dropping Wednesday.
Thursday night.
AWA Super Clash 1985. Not even going to ask Wai the question, because he has, like Jungle Boy, he's buried his own grave.
Yes.
Dug his own grave was the term I'm going for. So this is going to be a fun show coming up, because I'm extremely tired. But we are going to keep going. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. And that is it. Roll the credits.